Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. I got a bunch of cool stuff to talk about, as well as the drawing for this month's Patreon giveaway, which is that awesome Pluto HDMI board for the GameCube that was donated by Greg Collins. But before I jump into the news, I just wanted to tell everybody about some of the new interviews I was doing, and I'm calling it the RetroRGB Road Trip. This essentially was an idea that I thought of a few years ago when the band I was in got booked for a mini tour around the northeast of the US. And I thought, hey, why not take this opportunity while I'm already traveling around to stop by some of my friends' houses and some of the people who I'd interviewed and really see what it's like in their environment. Because in so many of these Skype interviews, you're basically just staring at them staring at a camera and you don't really get to see what's there. Even for a lot of people that do their own videos, you're still kind of just seeing the perspective of, their webcam looking back at them. And I really just wanted to go and show everybody what it's like to hang out with some of these people and see what their labs are like. And the whole tour thing with the band didn't really happen the way I wanted, but the idea always stuck with me, and it's something I really wanted to do. So I just figured, what the heck, I have an opportunity to do it, let me just start doing it. So while this first trip was technically on a plane, not a road trip, as so many of you have pointed out in the comments, it's the same theory. I really just want to show what it's like on the other side of the camera. And while that might be a little bit cheesy, I've really been enjoying it so far. And I really hope to keep doing it. I have at least 4 more episodes that'll be put up, probably a little bit more. I'm going to try to get as many done as I can, but just with the way the work schedule goes, I might end up just releasing them once a week because even though I try to do a bunch in the same trip, it takes a long time to edit and do all the post-processing stuff. But the bottom line is, it's really up to you guys to decide if you want me to do more of them. If they get a bunch of hits and people seem to like them, I'll keep doing it. If they flop, then you will have spoken, and I'll just stick to Skype interviews. But at the end of the day, if I had an infinite budget, like if I won the lottery or something, I would never do a Skype interview. Every single thing I do, I would, depending on the situation, I would jump on a plane and fly out to wherever the people I want to talk to are, or fly them in for some of the things that we work on together, depending on what it is. So, I always have to keep budget in mind when I do these things, which the first few episodes I had this really nice camera as the main angle, and then I have my spare camera as the side. And as you'll notice, it's very apparent which is which because of the quality. And I wish I had, the ability to have a team of people, but the bottom line is I got to be able to do this with equipment that'll fit in a backpack, all by myself with nobody else helping. So it's going to be small and easy to use. So be a little easy on me if you see some of the way the angles look and some of the equipment. But I'm getting better each time. I'm learning new tricks on how to do all this stuff by myself. And my brother just visited from LA, who's actually a producer. So while most of his experience involves teams of people shooting TV shows, he also had some on-site tricks for me to use when I really am just scrambling all by myself to get it done. But I hope if anybody's interested, they'll check it out. The first one's already up, where I went to Jason from GameTech's house and got to see his lab and where he works and shoots all the videos. Jason was absolutely awesome, so thanks again, Jace, if you're watching, for taking care of me for 2 days and having a great time. But I hope to have a bunch more. There's at least going to be 4 more after this, and I hope to keep going. So if you like it, please share, tell your friends, and maybe we can get, the more hits I get, the more popular I know it'll be. But anyway, hope you enjoy it, but let's jump right into the news. First up, there's a new OS for the RGB-Pi, which is the device that gets RGB output from a Raspberry Pi and has all of the components right in the SCART head. The OS update includes a bunch of cool features, but the one that jumped out at me was NetPlay. So now you're able to use some of those games that were designed in old consoles that you had to sit next to each other. You could play those over the net or in some kind of LAN gaming. And features like this are what always make me want to go try new emulation stuff, because while I have most of the original consoles for all of my favorite consoles, stuff like this is neat and always makes me want to try it out. So anybody that has an RGB Pi, definitely do the update, and if you get time, maybe try the NetPlay and see how it works for you. The team behind the Floppatron has now done the Airwolf theme song. And in case you're unfamiliar, the Floppatron is where they linked a bunch of old 3.5-inch floppies and some other old computer pieces together, and they were able to calculate the pitch that each one of them makes in order to recreate music. So I've seen a bunch of these things on here, or a bunch of songs done on the Floppatron, and the Airwolf theme song definitely makes me smile because that was one of my favorite shows as a kid. And just an FYI, if anybody wants to go back and rewatch some of those old shows like Knight Rider and Airwolf, Knight Rider was awesome and completely held its own, especially with some of the crazy stunts that they did. But when I went back to try to rewatch Airwolf, it was painfully bad. So one of those things was the memory, or one of those things that the memory was better than the actual thing that I remembered. So maybe I'll give it one more try at some point, but I think I'd like to just keep that memory of that badass helicopter in my head, listen to the theme song, and then never go back and remember how terrible it actually was, especially those later episodes when they changed the team. Smoke Monster was asking anybody that has Super Mario World hacks that utilize the SA-1 chip to contact him and see if he can get a hold of the ROM. He's specifically looking for things that have the author's name and revision on it. That way he could properly track and give credit to everybody that made those. But to be honest with you, that's something I'm really interested in as well. Strangely enough, I was out picking berries with a friend the other day, and we came back, and the relatives, the young kids, were playing Super Mario World, and I realized it had been a couple of years since I played it through, and now that Red Guy is working on the SA-1 support for the SD to SNES, I'm really wondering what it would be like, what other enhancements could be added. And I'd seen some demos of people adding some pretty cool stuff. So hopefully somebody will have a very cool hack of Super Mario World that utilizes all of the SA-1 enhancements, and I'll go through and do a full playthrough again one of these days. And speaking of the SD to SNES, Akari just released a new official firmware that includes Red Guy's SuperFX support, as well as a whole bunch of other enhancements and bug fixes. So this is one of those firmware updates that if you own an SD to SNES, just update it right away. There's really no reason not to. You get a ton with it, and as always, Akari's updates are free, which is pretty freaking amazing because I think these teams like this could always charge for it if they wanted to, but they don't. This is just for the community, for everybody to use. So the link is in the description. Anybody that owns this SD to SNES, definitely jump on that. Ryan Morrison, aka the Video Game Attorney, just did another Ask Me Anything on Reddit. And the first one he did, I thought was really awesome. That's actually how I got in touch with him. I had read through and thought he'd answered a bunch of very cool questions, and that's why I ended up having him on for an interview. But he just did a second one, so anybody that's interested in any of that stuff at all, or even if you're just kind of start your own business around the video game scene, it might be worth giving it a read. The team behind the new Toe Jam and Earl game said that it's definitely being released on consoles this fall, which is still 3.5 years after the Kickstarter campaign, so it's been quite a long time, and they still don't have an official release date, but they're guaranteeing this fall. So I'm very interested to play it and to see what it's like, especially after all the delays. And I think some of the delays were just on publishing stuff and not the game itself, but overall, it's kind of neat to see it, and I vaguely remember the Genesis version, so maybe I'll give that a play first, and then play this one when it comes out. 8-Bit Dude just announced a wireless controller for the NES Classic that has the home button included right on it. So no more button combo presses. You could just treat it as if it was a stock controller, but wirelessly. I'm very curious to see how much lag this adds, because now you have wireless controller lag on top of software emulation lag on top of whatever display lag that whatever display you're using it on adds. So all of that over what the original, one-to-one would have been, which is just the wired controller original console on a CRT. When you start adding all of this stuff up, even if it's just a few milliseconds, every time you add on more lag, it's just another thing to be annoyed with. I haven't tried the 8-Bit Do controllers at all for the NES Classic, and I have pretty limited time on the NES Classic itself. I wasn't very impressed with it overall for hardcore gamers. For casual gamers, I'm sure it's fine, but so if you're interested in this, give it a shot, but just always keep in mind how much lag could potentially be there when you add all of these different things up. John Linneman just uploaded another video to Digital Foundry, and this one goes through how Wolfenstein 2 looks on the Switch versus the other consoles, as well as go through some of the tricks that they used to even get it running on the Switch architecture to begin with. I thought it was a really cool video, and as always, I absolutely love the way those guys do the comparisons. I think John Linneman has now set the standard for what everybody that makes any video should aim for, and while I'll aim for it, I will never be that good. I'm going to try real hard, but he does it the best so far, at least out of everybody that I've seen. But he does a really great job just demonstrating and showing some of where the detail is lost, and other times where the detail is lost and it doesn't matter, which is a good thing because then you just get overall more performance. But either way, even if you're remotely interested in Wolfenstein or the Switch architecture, maybe check out the video because it's a pretty great one that goes in depth. Ben Heck recently uploaded a video about Vectrex repair and about repairing the 3D glasses module that was available for it. And I'm really glad some more of the mainstream players are starting to talk about Vectrex, because I think a lot of people concentrate on what's the rarest console or the most expensive or things that are cool, but the Vectrex really deserves a lot of more recognition, and I would really like that experience to be preserved, because there's just no other way to ever truly experience what it's like to play a Vectrex 3D game unless you strap on the goggles with the weird spinny thing and play it on the Vector monitor. So people like Vectrex Rolly have been talking about it for years. Cousin Scott always talks about it, but it's nice to sometimes see some of the people with more followers and a bigger audience get exposed to this stuff, so that way more people that might be interested and didn't even know exists could hear about it. So let's all show the Vectrex a little bit more love. It's not the greatest console, it does not have the greatest games, but it's very, very unique and one of the few that I think should be popping up at a lot more displays and hopefully a lot more game stores, just so people could walk in and really experience it and play it right there. Voultar just uploaded an open source Genesis RGB bypass board, and this isn't his Sega Mega Video board that's designed to sit in line with the existing signals and just upgrade the quality. This is a more traditional RGB bypass board, kind of like Arcade TV, Alex's solution. For installations like this, I do have the guide that I did with Alex's board that would still apply to this one. And the only thing to really pay attention to is, depending on your board revision and how you'd like to do the installation, you might actually want to lift the pins on that Sega board and remove the RGB lines completely. This of course disables composite video, but it removes any chance of jail bars. I know there was a bit of a debate from people that weren't sure that lifting the pins was the best solution, and while I admit they're very brittle and they could break very easily, as long as you're very, very careful, you could lift those RGBS pins from the Sega chip and install this mod, and if you ever needed to remove it or to put it back to stock, you could very easily just remove the mod, push the pins down, and resolder it to the board. So essentially it's a very non-destructive mod. It's just very dangerous because of how brittle those pins are. So as always, if you're not comfortable doing mods, try to find a trusted modder that people in the community know and have proven themselves to not dump a handful of hot glue on things and go from there. And if anybody's interested in RGB bypasses, check out the page on my site that shows how to do Alex's bypass, as well as gives details and cool little tricks like removing the RF adapter but putting the Genesis 2 DIN upside down in its place so that you could have a Genesis 1 with the Genesis 2 RGB port, which is really handy for RGB cables and the 32X. And speaking of Voultar, he just uploaded a video that showed repairing and restoring a PC engine. It wasn't so much a tutorial like a lot of his other videos, in that it just showed his troubleshooting process and how he was able to take a PC engine that didn't turn on and fix it. And then it showed his RetroBright process, which I thought was pretty awesome because I didn't really know too many people that did it that way. And anybody looking to RetroBright their consoles might want to take a look at this in case this would work better for them than the standard sit out in the sun way. I had major issues with some of this video, and he and I argued for like an hour about it. First of all, him scrubbing the console with isopropyl like that takes absolutely forever, and I think it's a waste of time. I think if you use the method that I've used for years on plastic, Goo Gone and then followed by just dish detergent, both to wash off the Goo Gone and to get the last funk out, I think you can have the whole console washed in 5 minutes and then you leave it out in the sun to dry. And I've never had a better or more efficient method of cleaning. You get one of those kitchen brushes and you just kind of push it into all the vents, and it's very quick and it works really, really well. So either way, I guess, is good. The only other thing that I had a huge issue with is at one point he showed using a magic eraser, which he did say be careful, use it sparingly, and he did only use it on the hue card slot, which doesn't have a textured plastic. So he absolutely used it the right way, but my heart sank when I saw it because sometimes, especially on textured plastic, magic erasers could ruin plastic. You might even want to be cautious enough to treat it like sandpaper. And while I'm being a little bit exaggerating on this, I am serious. If you'd like, take an old NES cartridge and just use a magic eraser a little bit on the back and see what happens to it. So we battled about that for a while, and he's sticking to his guns and I'm sticking to mine. I do not use a magic eraser at all, and that is unless it's absolutely the last resort. And while I'll clean boards with isopropyl, when it comes to just plastic, I always just use the Goo Gone and dish detergent solution because it works great and it gets everything off without sitting there with a Q-tip having to scrub every little bit, especially when you use a plastic kitchen brush, because it's coarse enough to get into all the little corners and get the funk out, but it's not rough enough to actually scratch any plastic. So I'll leave the decision up to you guys on what cleaning method you'd like, but of course the link is in the description to both his video and the right way to clean your consoles. Tinkerplunk has released some open source add-on boards for the Gscartsw Switch Lite. The first is a manual selection switch that allows you to manually choose which input is active, and the next is an optical audio switch that wires directly in. So this is basically a board with a bunch of optical audio inputs that wires right into the Gscart switch that allows you to have an audio input that matches whatever SCART input is live, which is really cool for things like the SNES audio mod. The PS2 has optical output just natively, and there's a bunch of optical mods for a few other consoles. So it's a pretty cool addition. I haven't had a chance to try either, but I'm really looking forward to trying both because I do have a bunch of optical audio consoles. And while the automatic switching has always been pretty much perfect for me on the Gscart, having a manual option is always, I guess it's never a bad thing. So I'll get around to trying both as soon as I have time. Rocker Gaming is now offering custom replacement jewels for GameCube consoles. They have a ton to choose from, and each one just fits right in the place of the original jewel that sat in the middle of the DVD tray. Anybody that wants to customize their GameCubes, just check out the link down below. I just saw a video on YouTube that shows how to add a CRT filter to the software Substance Painter. And to be honest, I'd never heard of that software before I watched the video, but just watching the developer go in and create this filter from scratch and make it look exactly like a 3D CRT filter was pretty awesome. And it's something that somehow, someday, I hope people would be able to apply to scalers. And I think you'd probably need a lot more resolution for that. So maybe 10 years from now when we have 8K TVs, we'll be able to put a filter like this over to truly recreate the look of a CRT. I'm not even sure if that's even possible, but hey, we could all dream. The Verge recently posted an article about CRT preservation and restoration, and while it came out a few months ago, I saw it start to recirculate again and thought I would at least talk about it and mention it here. But it's a pretty neat story about a company that's trying to preserve these CRTs for use in things like museums, and I've seen it a lot too for sets of movies and things like that. But it was a pretty neat article, and I just figured I'd share it. There's now a Kickstarter page for a kit that allows you to play Duck Hunt on a flat screen TV. The kit will cost $130 for the main kit, or about $500 if you want to buy an early adopter kit, and you have to replace the guts of a light gun, and then also replace the guts of the Duck Hunt cartridge itself. You basically treat it like the adapters that came in the Gyromite carts, where you plug the Duck Hunt game into this and then set it inside the cartridge. And that way you could just use the normal Duck Hunt cart and not have to have any weird adapter solution on the outside. Overall, I'm really not sure how I feel about it because it's only for Duck Hunt, and they said that they're never producing this again. It's just, if the Kickstarter's funded, that's the only way to get it, and then that's all they want to do with it. So both of those things are pretty disappointing, and I'm not really sure if just Duck Hunt is worth $130 to me. I'm sure it is to many people, and to be honest, someday I really, really hope to get an original PlayChoice 10 Duck Hunt arcade machine. I think that would be just the coolest addition to my collection. Because, you know, it's at the end of the day, it's whatever means the most to you, and that's definitely on my list. But I think there's potential here, and I really hope that the developer would consider other options, and maybe I'll even try to reach out directly. But I think what would be pretty incredible is if they open sourced the software side and continued to sell their hardware. Because if this is something that you could patch ROMs, so you don't have to use hardware for all of your cartridges, and you could do it to the entire NES library, I'd buy two. 130 then seems like a great deal, because then you'd be able to use your original light gun and your original NES, upscaled through RGB, and probably even through solutions like the AVS and the Analog NT Mini, right on your flat screen for the entire NES Zapper collection. And that is absolutely, in my opinion, worth it. So maybe they'll keep an open mind and try to do something different. Maybe they'll stay where they're at and not do anything else, but it has a lot of potential. I'm just not really sure if they'll be able to hit their $140,000 target with the Kickstarter campaign set up the exact way it is. There's been a rumor floating around that Google is planning a competitor to both the Xbox and the PlayStation. And because it's just a rumor, I'm not going to waste any time speculating. I'm just going to say that if it's true, I really hope Google uses, their massive budget to design a really powerful and awesome new console, and not just repurpose an Android tablet and, make another Atari VCS or something. But anytime there's solid info and not just a rumor, I'll let everybody know. Artemio recently posted a video that's a tutorial on how to use an oscilloscope. And the person that did it goes into a little bit more detail of why you're doing the things you do, as opposed to the video Steve and I did, which just shows you what to do. I'm happy that we did that, because I wanted more of a straightforward approach to things. But if people are wondering a little bit more of why they're doing it and want to understand exactly what's going on, this seems like a pretty good first step. And then you could kind of search around and go from there for the different things and methods that you need more info on. Someone on the Shmups forum has just released their own custom firmware for the open source scan converter that's designed to work with Extrem's new 360p modes for the Game Boy interface software. If you're looking to use the GBI with your OSSC, maybe check this one out and see if it works better for you. I believe it also has features that are compatible with certain SNES modes and Saturn as well, so it's certainly worth checking out if you like tinkering with that stuff. And speaking of the Game Boy interface software, I wanted to talk about something that I feel might be a huge missing feature of the software. But I really wanted to poll everybody's opinion and see in the comments down below what everybody else thought, just in case I'm one of the few that feel this way. Because I certainly wouldn't want to ask Extrems to look into something that would be a ton of work if there's really only a few people feeling the same way. But it's my opinion that the biggest issue with the Game Boy interface software is figuring out which of the three versions works for you, and then how to get any of the extra options working with those. So at the moment, there's 3 versions out there that are named differently than the original 3 versions, and then some options can be toggled with button presses in a GUI, and other options have to be changed by modifying a CLI file, or even sometimes working through Swiss. So that's a lot of different variables, and I know a lot of people that could completely figure that out, but do not want to spend the time doing that. They just want to play their games. So what I was really hoping is one file that boots to a GUI, that you could then select whatever output resolution you want, and have a standard countdown timer, just like you see in almost every device that allows you to change resolutions. Something that says, can you still see this? If so, press yes. If not, it'll revert to the previous mode in 15 seconds or something like that. I really think just having one file and one way to boot into a GUI would be just the ultimate addition to the Game Boy interface software and make it so much easier for everybody to use. Once again, though, I would like to poll everybody's opinion, because maybe I feel, maybe everybody else feels different. And I also wanted Extrems to really see how everybody feels and kind of gauge the feedback, because sometimes coming from just one person, it's hard to believe. He and I went back and forth a while back when he added some amazing video modes, and I was just talking on the forum about it, and he got frustrated with me, as he often does, and said, can we stop talking about video modes? There's so much more important things about this. But, no offense, he was wrong. I think the number one thing that people go crazy over is being able to play it in its original resolution, and, of course, the no lag features of it. So, no offense, but, sometimes you're so sucked into a project, you might not see the one thing that's missing, or the one thing you already did that's so important. So, just kind of everybody post down below and see what everybody thinks about this. Extrems, if you're watching, I'm sorry that I always drive you crazy with this shit. I know I probably drive you nuts, and just know that I'm obviously a gigantic fan of yours. I gush over your software every time there's an update, so before I piss you off again, please understand that I really am just trying to help and I think that there's a lot of things that can be done if we make it one file. One thing that I've always dreamed of that I thought would be an incredible thing to do is talk to somebody that can print real GameCube games, like maybe those Action Replay people. And if you can get a one-file solution, maybe we can get printed actual Game Boy interface boot software. Now, it's a little bit shady, and we probably have to sell it out of Hong Kong or something, but you know, the GameCube has been out of circulation for a while. Nintendo hasn't made it or support it, so maybe we could get away with doing something Action Replay like, but maybe that's all just a pipe dream. All I know is having one disk that you could boot to that has a GUI and maybe even accesses an SD reader, so if you want to boot Swiss or newer versions, you can go right from there. But I just think that would be incredible, especially because every game store I walk into nowadays, the Game Boy Player hardware usually sells alone for 20 bucks, but the Game Boy Player software can sell for $50 or $60 just for the disc itself, if not more. So that means that people are spending that much money on a disc that does not play in 240p, that does not have a great experience, and adds a ton of lag. So maybe that whole last bit of this rant was completely unrealistic and we'll never be able to put it on a real bootable disc. I just think if there's any chance at all in that happening, it would be worth looking into, and there's no way to get to that point without having one file, or at least a boot GUI so that you could boot into this and then figure out where you want to go from there. I do realize you could do a lot of that with Swiss, but I think something just dedicated to this would be excellent, because I know a lot of people that own GameCubes strictly for the Game Boy interface software. So once again, please be polite in the comments. I absolutely mean no disrespect to Extrems. I just want to try to pull a little bit more out of a project that's so incredible, and I think so many more people would want to experience if it was easier to use, and the big dream here, if you could throw it on a disc that could be booted in any GameCube. Now it's time to draw the winner of this month's Patreon giveaway for the Pluto HDMI board donated by Greg Collins. This board comes with the actual HDMI board itself that you could wire right into your GameCube, as well as Greg's 3D printed design that allows for a no-cut HDMI mod. This is the solution where you just desolder the digital port that's there and put this in its place, allowing for a perfectly clean installation. So thank you so much to Greg for donating this. That's absolutely awesome. And also thanks to Greg for all the great work he does for the community and all those amazing 3D printed designs. I have my Super Nintendo controller stand sitting behind me over there on my shelf. But thanks again to Greg, and let's fire up the spin wheel and pick a winner. All right, here we go. Here's for the winner of the Pluto HDMI board. Dylan. All right, Dylan, I'm going to go check my Patreon page and make sure that there's not more than one Dylan. For anybody who's doing this, please make sure that you have a first and last name or some way to make sure that I know it's you. But I'm going to go back and look up Dylan, and if your username on my Patreon is just Dylan, you have won a Patreon HDMI kit, including the 3D printed bracket, donated by Greg Collins. So thank you so much, Dylan, for being a Patreon subscriber. I keep saying it because I mean it. I couldn't do this without you guys, and I hope to grow the Patreon this year, and I hope to keep having some really awesome giveaways. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thank you so much to all my Patreon subscribers. I couldn't make any of these videos without you. Thank you so much to Greg once again for donating that very cool Pluto board and 3D printed solution. And thanks to everybody that watches. I'll see you guys next time.